Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started with the event. So I was originally asked to moderate a discussion between the two select board candidates and two candidates for town moderator. I think originally we had all four, and but two have decided not to attend. So we have Jo Beth Dudley and Frank Tillotson. So we have some questions that have come in and been aggregated from questions that have come in beforehand. So I've got 12 total here between the two that I'll ask, but I'll give them each a chance to introduce themselves first, and then we'll go into the questions. So Frank, do you want to start off?
No, ladies first.
Okay. So I'm Jo Beth Dudley, and I've been on the Dalton Select Board for 3 years now, and that experience really is very helpful. It takes a while to learn about municipal government. And the other thing that helps me in this role is all my prior experience. I have a lot of years working in higher education as a administrator, manager, doing budget and finance, things like Associate Dean for Finance and Administration at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And that has been really important because it allows me to look at financial statements that are detailed financial transactions, look at how things are categorized, work with the DRA forms and translate information into those forms. The other thing I have done with the COVID is apply for grants for reimbursement for COVID experience. So the years of research administration I did has really come in handy for that process. And I'm looking forward to working with the town for another 3 years. There's a lot left to do. We're, as a select board, moving forward we have a list of projects, so we'd like to make progress on them.
Great, thank you, Jo Beth. Frank?
Okay, well, thank you, Carl, and Mr. Moderator, and Jo Beth, and people at home, and members of the media. Good evening to you. My name is Frank Tillotson Jr. I was born and raised right here in Dalton, New Hampshire. My dad worked at the Gilman paper mill, and my mother, Alice, well, she worked at a lot of the restaurants, and probably a lot of you people have been there to them, where she worked, and that's why they always called it Alice's Restaurant. So after first grade, I went to first grade right here in Mrs. Farron's room at Dalton Elementary, which is where our selectmen meetings take place. It was on to Littleton in 1967, where I attended Lakeway Elementary School and Littleton High School till my graduation in 1977. In fact, back then, I lived in a brown house, which was the Ordway House, which was next to the Beale House in Littleton, which was right up the street from Jo Beth Dudley, where her parents lived, and her dad was my physician for many years. I went to broadcasting school, and I in Boston and returned to work for radio stations WLTN, WRCI in Hillsborough, and WKXL in Concord, New Hampshire. I also volunteered at WNEC, that's the North New England College radio station. And currently I'm on Saturday night on WZNC LP and North Country Community Radio on the community radio station in Littleton. After the divorce, I came back to Dalton and helped take care of my parents, and they are 88 years old. And I have been living there for the last 18 years, back in my grandmother's house. Again, I am the son of Frank and Alice Tillotson and grandson of Hazel Tillotson, and some of you may have heard of her as a teacher in Whitefield for many years. I live at the top of the hill business district, which what we call it, because we have a store, 2 gas pumps, and a garage, and a hair salon. It's also the original 135, Route 135 Dalton drag strip for speeders that go past our house at 409 Dalton Road, next to the old town ball field, which my dad and I mowed for many years, and thanks to Bob for taking that over. Why am I running? Because, well, it's because of those that came before me that I look up to as former moderators from Dalton. My great-grandfather, he was a moderator. My grandfather was also a House of Representative and a moderator. Willie Emerson, now he lives down by the church there, that's where he lived. He was a moderator. Clyde Switzer, even Jeff Woodburn and Ann Crampton. What I want to do, Carl, is to bring back integrity back to the position again and being neutral on the issues of the town and to represent everyone at the meeting fairly.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Frank.
Yeah.
Nice intro. Okay, so then, as we said, we've got 12 questions that were aggregated from other questions that came in. So if you submitted one and here it's slightly different, it's just we're trying to combine them into similar questions. Some for Frank, some for Jo Beth, some for either. So I'll start asking around. So Frank, the first one for you says, what made you decide to run for the position of moderator? So you've just
As
answered some
I
of it.
just said, Carl, it's like family tradition, and it's out of respect to the former moderators that we had in Dalton that I grew up with, and how they were all sort of the same. I guess you wanted to say the same timber or whatever, that it was from my grandfather to Willie Emerson, Clyde Switzer, Jeff Ferdinand. I mean, all these people brought integrity to the office of moderator, and I like to see that come back after about 4 to 5 years of not having that.
Okay. So then, Jo Beth, one for you. Do you feel that there are transparency issues between various town boards and the citizens of Dalton? And if so, how could this be remedied?
From what I see, all the boards try to be extremely transparent. All the meetings are public. There are obviously certain things that have to be done in non-public. I think that we could improve that by one of the projects that the select board has moved forward with is we are getting a proposal for updating our website. The website, I think at one point was probably good, but it's very jumbled and unorganized now, and it's difficult to find things. It's difficult for us to post information. And when we get that updated and refreshed, I think that would be a great way to be able to share information with the town in a more transparent manner.
Okay. Frank, another one for you. What do you feel are positive traits or skills that a moderator should have?
Well, a moderator has to, at the meeting, the moderator has to remain neutral. And it's not what the moderator thinks of a certain issue, whether it be we have money that was for the veterans and how that was shot down by the moderator. I mean, back then, when you got to remain neutral. And yes, there was a vote and there was another vote, but then it probably should have went to a secret ballot, even though nobody likes secret ballots. But the moderator shouldn't have to break the tie. The moderator should really try to get the assembly to go which way it wants to go and to feel that what the intentions of the voters. It's not the moderator who should be with the issues, but it should be to moderate the meeting and have the voters speak at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jo Beth, back to you. There have been several citizens desiring services or activities for the elderly, children, or families in Dalton. This includes transportation, children's activities, or recreation, or bringing back things like the Dalton Field Days or Dalton Mud Run, which is a 5K. Should the town government have a key role in providing financial support for social services or activities like these?
So there are a lot of things wrapped up into that question. The town does support social services through regional organizations. Every year in our budget, we budget for things like Tri-County CAP and some of the other health and social service things. I think there's always room for more support, and of course, it's a balance of how much the town can afford, how much the taxpayers want to contribute, and what services we can get. Some of the other things, I think it should be a partnership between organizations and the town government in terms of things that support the community. I know that we have a fairly active Sprint to the Town Hall that has, like, I think this Saturday, there's a ham and bean dinner and those things. The question is who's going to organize them and move them forward, and whether it's an organization or the government, and I would be open to either one. I think there is an issue of who has the time and commitment. It takes a lot of volunteers to do those things, and we need people to step up and help and volunteer, and we welcome that.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one more for you right now. If the town of Dalton was offered a large gift of money from a citizen not affiliated with any big business that could be used for any public purpose in town, what would you want to do with it? So I think this is pretty hypothetical, but.
Oh, there are so many projects, and I don't know the scope of the money. So, I mean, we've got things like programs, like we're talking about social service programs. I think if we're looking forward, there's some kind of nuts and bolts things, like this building has a lot of deferred maintenance. It's going to need some work in the next few years. But it also would be nice to get some help with economic development, to bring in somebody who has expertise in moving forward, like a planner, and look at, are there things that the town could or should be doing to develop economically while still preserving the character of Dalton, that rural residential feel, and balancing that. So those would be my first choices, but it would be up to the people of the town how to spend it. It would be a public hearing to accept it and to talk about ideas. So it wouldn't just be my ideas, but it'd be ideas from the town.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Frank, it can be hard to stay neutral and to moderate any meeting fairly. If elected, how do you plan to remain unbiased and open in the face of the current intensity and division on issues facing Dalton?
Well, again, as a moderator, I have to take as a citizen of Dalton, I have to take that out of the equation and be the moderator for the evening, and to have each whatever that comes up that we can, we can go and talk about. But the moderator should be neutral. I mean, there's no way that the moderator should be biased towards one way or the other. It's that one day that as a moderator that you have to be neutral in this whole thing. And again, if the vote is tied, well, then let's try to take the vote again. If it's still tied, let's go to a secret ballot. Let's try to break the tie that way. It's not the moderator's decision to go one way or the other. You're right, that would make it where I would be kind of biased, but no. I just want to run the meeting and then have equal say, and let's take the politics out of it. It's a town meeting. We all come to town meetings and we all get together and we decide what the next course of action is going to be. It's not my decision, but it's the people that are out there in that audience that raise their cards.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Jo Beth, what are your views on the possibility of cutting taxes for the townspeople? Where do most of the taxes paid go toward now? How much of our taxes go towards the school?
So that's an interesting thing, because right now the town portion of taxes is 20% or less, and it's been that way for the last several years. So when you look at your tax bill, Most of it is the school, and there's a big chunk that also goes to the county.
So just 20% of my tax bill.
Is for
Really
the
goes
town,
to the
supports the
town.
town.
Okay.
So it's not very much.
So on the first part of, what are your views on the possibility of cutting taxes for the townspeople? Do you have a sense of that?
So if we can't cut town expenses, it's going to have a minimal impact on taxes.
Mhm.
It's not negligible. But then you have to look at, are we able to provide the services that we are required to by the state? And then are we going to be able to do things such as, we have this building, maintain the building, and the other infrastructure, plow our roads, take care of our roads in the summertime, all of those things, have a transfer station. Those all cost money. So it's always a balance in terms of what we want to cut and not have available for services in order to save a little bit of money on taxes. The big thing is looking at the school district, but I'm a big supporter of education. I think it's critical. So, but maybe there are ways that the school district could be more efficient. I think we're really looking at an issue coming in the coming years if Carroll pulls out of the SAU. That will have an impact on our taxes. And the other thing is working with the county, because we pay over $400,000 to the county every year. And it would be nice to have people from Dalton be involved in the county governance, go to their meetings, their budget hearing, and have input on how that money is spent. That would have an impact on our taxes as well.
Okay, so that's interesting. Only 20% of our taxes directly related back to town activities, and the vast majority from outside. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, I'll ask one more for you, Jo Beth, then we'll go to some both. What are your views about bringing back a police department in town? I've heard that it could cost upwards of $500,000. Is that number accurate? Do you know how the addition of a town police force would affect taxes?
So a couple of years ago, the town voted to discontinue our police force. At that time, it was very, very part-time. We didn't have regular patrols, and it was a budget neutral decision. So we substituted that $15,000 with contracting out to the state police. I would have to do a cost assessment if we were going to bring it back. We would have to define, what does it mean to have a police department? If we're going to have a full-time police department, that's more than one person, because you've got to have coverage for people, you know, they can't work 24/7. And they're also, you need coverage for sick leave and vacation leave. So how many people would we need? How many vehicles? What type of equipment? We would have to figure out the cost of providing training. I think it's more complex to have a police department now than it was, say, 10 years ago. In terms of the training requirements, we'd have to look into things such as liability insurance. So it's a very complex issue, and I honestly have not done a cost assessment, so I don't have a dollar figure. But I'm thinking, you know, I don't know the salary for a policeman, to be honest, but if it is, say, 70 or 75,000 a year for a full-time position, and then probably 25 to 30,000 on top of that for benefits, plus a retirement package, you're talking for every person you hire, well over $100,000. So that would have a significant impact on taxes.
Okay, then we've got 3 questions for both of you, so we'll just go back and forth. So Frank, what is your education and professional background? If elected, what of your skills do you feel would help you to perform the position?
My radio broadcasting background, and I think that would help out. As a radio announcer, you have to communicate with your listeners, and I think I could probably communicate well with the voters of Dalton, and hopefully that they will, you know, I just think that that's the basic thing, is that you have to communicate as a moderator with the public as well as listening to them communicate back to you.
And Jo Beth, how about you?
So I touched on it. I, like Frank, graduated from Littleton High School. I grew up in the area. Then I went to the University of Pennsylvania. And I also have a graduate degree in public administration. And I have years of experience. Most of it is in higher education, dealing with management, administration, finance, budget, research administration, managing research grants, managing programs. So all of that experience has really helped me in terms of managing the business of the town. Because the select board really does a lot in terms of the business of the town.
Okay. Okay, so Frank, so the question is, as we all know, Dalton is being courted by a business promising an increase in our tax base, but with a proposal that, without getting into specifics, has its downsides. If elected, how do you feel you can make Dalton more likely to attract businesses that could substantially increase the town's tax base? How could you assure that any new companies would not cause harm to town property or its citizens?
Well, Carl, as a moderator, that has nothing to do with being a moderator. In fact, I had no idea what this business that you're talking about would be courting us until I have seen something that comes before our select board, or if I see something coming before the planning board, or you have to follow proper procedures in a town. And until that comes before the board or the planning board or the zoning board, it's just all here. I mean, it's not hearsay, but yes, but I can't comment on that until actually they make a presentation to our board or to whoever that they want to come to town. Now, if you're talking about Casella, well, I see some pros and I see some cons. But as a moderator, my feelings go out and I have to operate a meeting. And I don't see why I would have a say in who comes to town as a business. I'm a moderator, not somebody that makes those decisions. I mean, that's nothing to do with being a moderator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jo Beth, how about you?
So I agree with some of what Frank said in terms of it needs to come before the appropriate boards and the process. And I think that I talked a little bit earlier about economic development. And I think that's something the town should look at, because there are companies that could come in and be an economic driver for the town and provide employment. And, you know, the key is to do it and to maintain the character of the town and to make sure there aren't any adverse effects from the business. And I don't want to make a judgment one way or the other on anything that is in the future now. One of the things that we're trying to do as a select board, we put it in the budget, is we really need help in the office. And we're looking at a full-time position that could help with some of the community development grants that would allow us to work on economic development and planning. And that would be something that could spearhead some things. We have some challenges of the town because we don't have infrastructure. Most businesses or industry are going to want public water, public sewer or septic, and all of those infrastructure things. And that's going to be a big investment if we wanted to actually develop infrastructure that's going to support business or industry. So it's not a simple question. It's something that needs a lot of thought and a lot of time. And it needs the town looking for resources that can help with funding that planning piece of it and going forward. I really support that, and I'm hoping we can move forward in the next year with some of the planning pieces of it. But it's not simple. It's not like, you know, as a select board person, I can say, oh, we're going to bring in industry, because where's it going to go? You know, how are we going to support it with infrastructure? And not just the water, sewer, electricity, all of that, but also fire, highway. It's very complex, but we definitely should be looking that way.
Okay, thank you. Last question we have. Could Dalton create a Chamber of Commerce or local boosters committee to proactively address our tax revenue problem? Will you commit to forming a group and accepting volunteer help from motivated residents? So Frank, I'll ask you first. I understand it's a little challenging in the same way the last one was. But
Yes, as the moderator, I don't see how I could, but as far as the idea of having a Chamber of Commerce or having more public input and maybe get some more people come to the select board meetings on Monday nights, that'd be nice. I'm all for people for what they want to do to help improve this little town. And it's not a little town anymore. It's really growing and it has its challenges. But I must say, with our local state police and our first responders, I think they're doing one heck of a job to help keep us safe in our town. And the first responders, they're always there right off the bat and during anything. So we're very lucky to have volunteerism in this town and people that support the town. But I would like to see, you're right, let's get a Chamber of Commerce going or something like that. Something that would be positive in town.
okay, thanks, Frank. Jo
Yeah,
Beth?
I second that. I think that would be great. I mean, I think it feeds into the economic development I was talking about. And I've said at meetings, I've encouraged people to come forth as volunteers because right now we don't have the bandwidth to be submitting grants that are out there to get some help with planning. And so we need staff, but we also need volunteers. If you're putting forth a competitive grant proposal, there's a lot of work that goes into it. You have to do a lot of research so that you can bring different elements into it and it's competitive. It takes a lot of legwork and time, and volunteer could really help with that. We have some skilled people in this community. That would be great.
Great, thank you. So that's the end of the questions that we received ahead of time, the 12 questions. So thank you both for
Yeah,
being
thank you.
here.
And take you at home too.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry we don't have the other two candidates. It would certainly be nice to have some dialogue between everybody, but we're glad to hear from at least the two of you. So
Yeah, my pleasure.
thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Jo Beth.
Great,
Thank you
thanks
all.
to
Take
everybody.
you at home.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.